Simon Griffiths here from Outdoor Swimmer Magazine. I'm here with Andrew Donaldson. Please give us a wave. And Jay Prchal. Andy is fresh from swimming around Manhattan Island, setting a new world record. 5 hours, 41 minutes and 48 seconds, I believe. Super fast. I'm really pleased to have both of you on the call at the same time, because Andy, whenever I've heard you talking about this swim on your Instagram clips or wherever, you always talk about we, and you always talk about the team, and it's very, very clear from the way you talk that you see this as a team thing, that it wasn't you swimming around Manhattan Island, it was you and Jay and whoever else was on your boat and everyone that was behind you. Can you talk a little bit about why you always, when you're talking about the swims, why you always talk about we rather than I?
100%, Simon, and like many things in life, I never see swimming as a solo sport, especially these marathon swims, these undertakings like Manhattan Island Swim, like an English Channel. They're not things you can accomplish on your own or set out to tackle on your own. You know, whether that's out in the water where you have someone like Jay on your boat, who's keeping you encouraged, keeping you fed and fueled, communicating updates throughout the swim, all your skippers, all the way through to your day-to-day life where you're working with your coaches, or you have your family support network, or even people like your massage person or your nutritionist. You need this network around you. So, you know, when I talk about swimming and the challenges I undertake, it's a product of everyone pulling together to make that possible. So for me, it's always the we.
Yeah, and Jay, I mean, you've been with Andy all the way through his Ocean 7. I think you've probably been with him for just about all of his swims. How does it feel for you? I mean, Andy is the one whose name, you know, he's the one that's always invited to talk on TV, and his name is by the records. And you're kind of, I mean, you kind of have to take, I mean, you're a good swimmer yourself. You kind of have to take your ego out of this. And you know, you're sitting there in the background. You're absolutely instrumental, as Andy's just said, in making these swims happen. How do you feel about the whole thing and your role in this, and how does it feel to be part of Andy's team?
Look, I mean, Simon, I'm at a different stage of life, I guess, than what Andy is. He's, 15 years my junior. So I guess, look, I've been around a little while. I've accomplished what I have accomplished, but I'm getting to do this and view this through someone else's eyes now. And the reality is I'm not 20 anymore, and I can't compete with the likes of the Andys of the world and these other great swimmers, but I can enjoy it from a different perspective. So I guess my stage of life now is giving back to the community, giving back to some other people, utilizing some of my experience and trying to help be part of that team and help the success of be it Andy or other people. So for me, I'm quite enjoying it. And the other thing too is, as much as Andy's enjoying the experience of being in the water and completing these challenges, I'm getting just as much of a thrill, but from a different perspective, because I get to see these locations from a boat. And sometimes, like with Manhattan, I mean, how many times can you say that you've traveled around Manhattan on a boat looking at this city lit up at night? And we did another swim around Maui not too long ago where we circumnavigated the island. And even from that perspective, I was getting to see some parts of the land that there's no way that you could access them from the road, and even experiencing that through other people's eyes as well. We had some native Hawaiians on the vessel with us as part of the support team, and even they were saying they've never seen these parts of the island, getting to experience it as their ancestors had. So he's getting it from one perspective, I'm getting it from another, but we're enjoying it, enjoying different elements.
Sometimes I wish.
I think Andy's a bit jealous. Actually, he's going to make you swim next time by the sound of it. So, like, the question for both of you then, like, say there's someone 10 years younger than Andy coming into the world of outdoor swimming, looking for another Jay. How would they go about finding someone like you, building that relationship and building that trust so you can build that team? That's kind of a question for both of you that you can fight over who answers that first.
Just probably explain how we met, I suppose. That's probably a good start.
Yeah. Well, I guess how we met. So look, we both competed back in Perth, Western Australia in the swimming scene there, be it open water or pool. And we got chatting one day at a pool meet, incidentally. And I mentioned to Andy that I had an ambition of doing the Rottnest swim in Perth. Now, that's an event I've done many times, but as a team, never as a solo. So for me to embark on doing, I guess, an event like that, which is 20 kilometers, meant I had to change a lot of things. And I knew Andy had done the swim before, and we got chatting, and he encouraged me to join the swim squad that he trains with, which is Perth. What's it called now? It's changed.
Perth. It was Perth City. It's now City of Perth.
City of Perth, which incidentally is one of the clubs that I used to swim with as a kid. So I've kind of come full circle. So we kind of knew each other from that, and of course, spending time swimming together, we got to know each other a little bit more, and then he, approached the idea of the Ocean 7. So that's kind of how we got to know each other and how this journey kind of commenced. But I guess looking at it from, answering your question, how do you let's just say, how do you replicate me? Because I'm God's gift to whatever. I wasn't going to say anything else. God's gift to do whatever. No, I'm kidding. But look, I mean, I guess, do you need to have a swimming background? I guess ideally it helps, because I kind of know what Andy's thinking and what he's going through, because I've experienced a lot of those things myself. So I kind of have an appreciation for that as well. But do you need to? Maybe not. I'm not so sure about that. But I think you need to have an attention to detail. You need to have, I guess, discipline as well, because there's certain things that, we do and other people would do as well, which is you've got to follow a routine. There's a specific timing, and I'm catering to Andy's needs or any other support person's needs, because everybody's a little bit different. So it's really going through, what does that athlete or what does that person require, and then catering to those needs. I think the other advantage as well, and this is a really, really big advantage, is knowing the other person. Yeah. So as an example, with Manhattan, I didn't even need to talk to Andy, and I could see and sense what was going on. There was a couple of moments there where I knew he wasn't feeling.
I've got a question on that in a bit, actually.
So yeah. I knew he wasn't feeling particularly good. So it was more about paying attention and really noticing those slight nuances that can, I guess, impact a person, or that they show, so that you can get a sense of what they're feeling and how they're going. And then in some cases, it's not even reacting. I mean, there is points in time where you do need to make a change and need to react to something that's going on. But for a lot of it, it's really just us putting our trust in one another. So Andy's got to trust that I've got his back, and I trust Andy in what he's doing. So I don't try and change Andy. I know how Andy works. And this goes for any swimmer that I'm supporting. So I need to understand how they work to then try and maximize or get the best out of them.
What I would say is, these are things that you build up to. If you meet someone, you don't have that level of trust yet, you don't have that level of understanding yet, but there has to be a willingness to grow that, and a potential there. When we first kind of met, and the idea was raised for Jay to come to England to help me with my English channel, we didn't really know each other that well. It was very circumstantial. Jay was in a position where he wasn't working. He had some money put aside. He was keen to come along and support, and I needed someone to come and support me. Otherwise, I was going to be traveling on my own. So we kind of got thrusted into this partnership together, and it wasn't. We didn't click straight away. We did butt heads a couple of times. I had to tell Jay to stop telling me what to do.
That was all Andy, by the way. I was.
This is really fascinating. Because you seem such a tight, tight bond, team that actually had a kind of norming and storming and norming phase, whatever you call it, at the beginning, when you were working out how the relationship was going to work.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ensure people understand. It might not click straight away. You might not hit the ground running, and it wasn't bad. It was just all I'd said to Jay was, look, I know you're trying to help here and telling me what to do, but How I operate best is this. I will come to you with questions. I will seek your feedback, but let it be on my terms. Let me come to you. And Jay was very good. He took on that feedback, adjusted his behaviour, and we've been very grand ever since.
Yeah.
You know, I think when it comes to finding, let's call it a mentor, a handler, someone that can support you on these journeys, you don't really know until you try, but you have to be both willing to go down that journey, willing to learn together, and be able to compromise, be able to adjust behaviors to make that partnership work well. So, you know, I talk about it like a partnership, like a but it almost is.
It makes sense. So some serendipity, and then there's a lot of hard work goes into it as well.
And you grow it with time, but you know, when you do both make that effort, I think you know, it becomes more special when you have other people to share that journey with, rather than taking it on your own. And the familiarity with each swim grows. You learn together. Like Jay said, he knows how I operate almost inside out, and he can recognize without me communicating.
Well, and even so, like, even knowing how Andy thinks and how he's going to process any piece of information that I give him. Like, Andy's a numbers guy and he likes to calculate a lot of things. So if I'm going to give him information, I almost have to think of the outcome before I give him the message, if that makes sense, because I want a desired effect.
Okay, that's interesting. You started mentioning numbers now, because that kind of leads on to the next question I had. So obviously, around Manhattan, it's an unusual swim because there's so much current assistance, or you've got to work with what you've got in terms of the currents and the tides there. You know, it's not like, you know, swimming in still water where you can measure your pace. So I mean, how did you go about calculating when and how to do this swim to give yourself the maximum chance of breaking the record? And then when you're swimming, how did you keep track of pacing? Because I know there were times when you said he was moving at 12 kilometers an hour, which is you know, it's nobody can swim that fast. And how did you know if that was a good pace or not? Because you haven't got anything to compare it with.
Well, fortunately, we did a lot of work in the planning and preparation stage, and we were working with Rondi Davis from New York Open Water. So much experience, insights, and knowledge about this swim, and how the currents and tides work in particular. Just for a bit of context to people listening, you know, Manhattan Island, you have 3 different rivers around the island that all work differently in accordance with the tides, and the tides affect the ways the currents are moving and how powerful they are. So, you know, we're swimming around this thing anti-clockwise and trying to be in particular places at particular times so that we're getting assistance from the currents and not fighting into them. And we had to get those right in order to have a chance of having a crack at this world record. So Rondi Davis from New York Open Water, she had predicted, she'd made a model of where we needed to be at certain times around the island, and we were basing our swim off of that data. So it was based on the currents, the projected speed that we plan to hold. So I'd said to her, I think like 4.8 Ks an hour, which is about 115 pace in 100 meters. And she plugged that into her forecast, and it spat out all these different locations and places and the corresponding times for when we were projected to be there. So, like you said, it was, you know, Jay could have told me I was traveling at 12 Ks an hour. What does that mean? And we had to come up with a system in advance that we could gauge how we were performing relative to the world record and see how we were going. Which
so effectively what we had is this. We had 2 things. We had a map of Manhattan and the rivers, and we had this model which had, luckily with Manhattan, there's lots of bridges that you go under. So we were utilizing those bridges or those markers as key indicators of where we needed to be. So trying to cut that down and make it simple, because there's 20 bridges that you go under. with the Manhattan swim, and we just simplified that to five points of interest, and basically just took what because the model had we had a start time, and then we had a predicted time we should be at these markers. So we were utilizing those times as an indicator to just give us a bit of a gauge of where we were at. And look, in the end, the conditions, so that the model is one thing based on what we think or what we believe is going to happen.
The model had us predicted to be 5 minutes under the record.
And then conditions on the day, of course, that alters. And when we were out there, the conditions weren't quite as good as what we were expecting. Well, certainly in a couple of points anyway. But then because there's 3 rivers involved and 3 different, I guess, tides or currents that we're having to work with, when you struggle with one, there's a payoff in another. Does that make sense? So you're kind of guessing the whole way through. And at one point, we were about 12 minutes behind what the record was, or what the model was predicting us to be. But then we came around another point, and then that jumped to 6 minutes in front. Yeah. And then we got closer to the finish. That was dwindling away. So it was hard work.
It was stressful.
Yeah. And sorry, I'll just add a point here as well. So when we were talking about the swim and even afterwards, it became really apparent what you needed for a successful swim in Manhattan. And one was a great swimmer. Other was a capable and a great team. And the third was all the conditions to be in your favor. And Andy was feeling a little bit unwell coming into this. So, there was a bit of a concern. The team we knew was good. We, obviously I was there. We had the kayakers who are really, they're a key part of this particular swim, because even the river, the current just doesn't flow down the river. It goes fast at one point, slower in another. So the kayakers were adjusting course all the time to try and pick a best line.
Alex out of Valor. Fantastic.
And then, of course, the conditions, we needed those to be in our favor, and seemingly they weren't quite where we wanted them to be. So that actually puts more importance back on the team in this particular event. So
yeah, I mean, it was fascinating watching your updates on Instagram. And going back to the point you made earlier, there was one, and it was relatively near the beginning. And you were saying, Jay, you're on the boat, and you were saying, I'm not sure what's happening. Andy's a little bit off the pace at the moment. I think he's slowed down. I don't think he's feeling too good. You weren't panicked. You were very calm about the way you presented it. But how did you actually know that he was off the pace, given all the currents and everything else that was going on? How did you know that he was not swimming at his best?
Yeah, there was, I guess, a couple of telltale signs. Like I was saying before, we get to know each other, and I know what Andy's thinking and feeling and what he looks like in the water. So I could tell that his stroke rate was a little down on where he wanted to be. We'd had a conversation before, and this comes into the planning and preparation. So we'd had a conversation before about, how Andy was going to approach this event and how he was going to pace himself. So I knew where he wanted to be, and he was a little off that pace. And look, it also helped. We had another, counterpart from Perth in the water as well at the time, Josie Page, and she was swimming a phenomenal race. She'd actually started a few minutes before we had on the same night. And when that video or that update came out, her and Andy were probably neck and neck in side by side. So, and not to downplay Josie's swim at all, because she swam absolutely amazing. But when I was looking at what Andy's capable of and looking at how he was sitting in the water, my expectation of him is he should have been a bit further in front, and he wasn't. And he was sitting there for a while in kind of this, not no man's land, but he wasn't happy. I could just see he wasn't happy. He was, and later on, he was feeling very heavy.
And did you communicate that to Andy, or did you know that he would? I mean, did you know that he would know and that he would be dealing with it in his own way, or did you like step in and say, Andy, you got to step this up a bit, or did you just leave him to his own devices there?
I was going to say, from my side, no, I didn't want to set any alarm bells off. Because it was relatively early in the swim, and look, and anything can happen, right? He's going to pull himself out of this hole or it's going to go the other way. So I just had to trust that Andy was doing what he knew best. But we were giving some updates on pace and things like that. So Andy knew where he was at. He knows anyway, but it's good to have it confirmed. And it's just a case of, one thing I was giving him some information on is what we felt the currents were doing. Because it's good for him from a pacing perspective, because as much as I'm giving him information based on the model, Andy's kind of researched where he thinks he needs to be as well. So, so like I said, he's a numbers guy. He likes this detail. Yeah. So he knows, I'm confirming, and then I'm giving some other little bits like strong current, weak current, whatever it might be.
So what I'll usually do is, or what we usually do, sorry, is say, for example, we're feeding every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
After a feed, Jay will give me an update on my stroke rate. And I know what my stroke rate's usually around 60. Out there in the water, it was down at 56, and I'm really finding it hard to pick it up to what it should have been. Fatigue was setting in a lot earlier. I was starting to tighten up about 90 minutes in and starting to feel really sluggish and heavy. I was developing the claw. And I'm just thinking, oh God, like this is not good. Like I'm not even a third of the way in, and really starting to struggle. But you know, we try to get updates every hour on distance covered, and like you said, I usually have an idea of where I am, or I had researched where I thought I should be after every hour. But I kept a quite open mind because, like you said earlier, Jay, this swim, even if we fall behind here, we might make it up a bit later because of the tides. So, you know, I wasn't too worried. And funnily enough, one of the updates that came through in the Hudson, one of the key areas that we were going to get an update from, how we planned to do it was writing either minus something or plus something in relation to the forecast of where we wanted to be in terms of the record. And I remember we were halfway down the Hudson, and I looked up at this update, and Jay was holding the whiteboard. We always use a whiteboard to communicate, and it's -10 on it. So I was like, oh my God, like here I am feeling like crap, and we're 10 minutes ahead of schedule on the forecast. Like, we're on here. So I shouted up. I was like, oh, yes, guys, this is good. We're on here.
And the funny thing was, is as soon as that cheer came up, I looked across at Rondi, and she looked at me, and she goes, I think he thinks he's in front. I turned the whiteboard around, and I went, oh, no, I put the wrong symbol. So I actually gave Andy the wrong information. So, but then it's funny, though, because it actually had the right outcome, because unknowingly, it spurred him on. So then I'm in my mind about, oh, hang on, do I correct this or do I not? And as fortune would have it, we got delayed because there was a tugboat coming towards us and we couldn't get close to Andy again. So there was no way I could give an immediate correction to the information.
Yeah.
And then a few minutes passed and I went, nah, I'm just going to leave it. Let's just see where we're at. Let's just keep going. And it's actually giving him a bit of a boost, knowing that he wasn't so good anyway.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of relates to something I've heard you talking about before, Andy. You've spoken about at UltraSwim, I think in one of your talks, that sometimes on a swim you hit a difficult patch, and what's important is not how you how do you describe it? It's not how you react, it's how you respond.
Yes.
And also this idea that you need to stay patient, because whatever you're feeling now, you might not be feeling in 10, 15, 20 minutes time, and to kind of stick with the process and, not let yourself spiral down, but stick with. Do you want to say a little bit about what went through your mind when you were you thinking back to these things that you've told other people? Like, were you following your own advice on that?
Yeah. And look, it's funny you say that, where you following your own advice, because when you're unwell, and I've been a little bit under the weather and run down in the weeks leading up to Manhattan, and it's when you're feeling like that you want to take shortcuts. and you want to you skip stretching or skip whatever it is because I'm not feeling great, I'm just going to conserve my energy. But it's those moments when these tools and these habits that you've been painstakingly working on are most effective. And it applied to this swim. Yes, I might not be feeling my best, but I still have to show up and still have to be diligent enough to apply these things that I go off and tell other people to use, but I'm not applying it to myself. And it was things like, your positive self-mental talk, your visualization, or thinking about your why, what's your motivation behind this, or slow breathing. I was using a lot of that to try get rid of this claw hand, get feel back into my fingers. Trying to cognitive reframing, looking for the positives. What am I enjoying right now? Take my mind off the pain. My goodness, I can see the Empire State Building and the Rockefeller Center right now. Like, this is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Thinking about my family, thinking about my gran and grandpa, like all these different things that I knew would help me in this swim. I really had to call on all of them because I wasn't in a good place. I was struggling. My stroke rate was down. I felt rubbish in the water. My energy was actually not bad, but everything else wasn't. So, it's when you're not on your best form, that's when I think it really shows your true character, and the importance of all these tools really come through and can make the difference. Unfortunately, in this case, those really helped. And sometimes when you're trying to do it all on your own and your tools aren't working, that's when having the good support network around you really makes a difference too. And having Jay on the boat or Alex on the kayak, and then just even giving something simple like a thumbs up, or relaying messages from family and friends around the world. Like all these systems that you put in place beforehand really come to fruition during the swim.
And the thing too is, Simon, is this is no different than going to the gym, right? So when you go to the gym, you don't start by lifting 100 kilos. You start by lifting 5 kilos, and then you work out. So all these things that Andy's putting in place for himself, he's like us. He's no different. He's human. He's not perfect. So he has to work at these things no different than working at the gym. And it starts off by giving yourself a little bit of compassion, and you're okay. You're human. You're going to make mistakes. You've got to, as you just said before, it's not how you react, it's how you respond. But you have to teach yourself that, because it's not natural instinct to then become calm again or talk yourself into breathing. So it is really a work in progress, but it is something that you can absolutely train for.
Okay. I've got to change tack a little bit now. I reached out to Ollie Wilkinson, who held the record before you, and I just emailed him. I mean, he swims in the UK, lives in the UK. I know he's not originally from here, but I just how does it feel to to have your record broken? And he told me he'd reached out to you, wished you luck, and congratulated afterwards. And he's actually said it's an honor to be beaten by such a quality swimmer. And then he's put in brackets, and I'm actually proud that he only beat me by 2 minutes. And he says also that he's happy to pass on the mantle of this record that he's held for quite a long time to another swimmer who's so devoted to the sport. So that's a really nice message that's coming from somebody that in a way you've beaten him. And I'm just within the swimming community as a whole, do you find that kind of sentiment of support comes from it's really widespread, and other swimmers are actually wishing you the best? They want you to do well because of who you are and because of what it does for the sport of swimming. And there's not that much there's rivalry, but it's kind of like you're helping each other as well.
I think there's always aspects of both, and what Ollie's just displayed, I suppose, is all of those right values. I think he didn't have to reach out, he didn't have to message. But he did, and it was such a lovely and really kind message and act as well. And I think we all have a duty to uphold those values as part of the community. You know, yes, I'm all for a bit of competition. I grew up as a competitive swimmer, but my friend Glenn Capelli, the way he talks about it, he says there's compare and compete, or celebrate and collaborate. And I'd like to think that there's aspects of both, but perhaps more to the celebrate and collaborate aspect of our community, you know, that we can really get behind the amazing things that people are doing. You know, we saw young Brian Foster do a two-way North Channel, Neil Aegeus swimming around Malta yesterday. Like, all these things are worthy of you know, celebration, and we should be all raising those achievements on as high as we can and uplifting them, because they're great for our sport. They're great for inspiring others. The people behind them are all quality people and can really teach people some important lessons. So yeah, I'm all for celebration and collaboration. And, you know, even when it comes to future swim challenges, that's what I'm thinking in my head. I would love to do more challenges with other people and for good causes. I think together we have such a louder voice, and we can really take a united stance to address the biggest issues out there in the world.
And what have you seen, Jay, from your side, from the messages coming in from, because you've probably been a bit of a filter for Andy in that because you want to keep him focused on the swimming. What have you seen coming in?
Oh, geez, I tell you, some of them I can't repeat on camera. We've had some interesting ones, but you know what? They're always all positive. You know, there's always the family messages that come through of support and things like that. But even when we were doing the Ocean 7 and Attila was holding the record for that particular swim, we were out in the middle of the Sugaroo Channel, and a message comes through from Attila to, you know, to wish Andy all the best and he can do it. And, you know, so there is this, I think for the most part, there is this collaborative and supportive community out there. And certainly with other events that I've been to, that's what I feel for the most part. Don't get me wrong, you still get some people who are very much ego driven, but that's life, right? Like, you get that in business, you get that everywhere. So, but I think naturally we're like that. I like to think that we're not really ego driven, or I certainly know I'm not, and I know Andy's not as well. So I think when you're naturally like that, you people like that gravitate towards you as well. So it's a like for like thing. So so maybe that's just the people that we surround ourselves with, or, you know, they're gravitating towards us possibly. I don't know, but I'm seeing similar things, for sure.
Okay, so I've got another question, a bit of a different tact again. So Andy, I know that as a young swimmer, you had ambitions to do great things in the pool, and I guess you didn't achieve what you wanted in the pool, and it was almost like a failure. And yet now you've rebuilt the successful swimming career. How have you gone about reorientating yourself and the way you think about yourself as a swimmer to get to where you are now, from, you know, almost like, and I don't like to use the word failure because it's but almost like, you know, you didn't achieve what you wanted, but now you achieved something else which you probably wouldn't have done if you'd have achieved what you wanted to when you were a teenager. What kind of message is there in there for other people, and how does it make you feel? Or, you know, have you thought about that sort of reorientation process?
It's really funny, Simon, because you're right. I don't think I would have come down this path had previous events not transpired as they did. I left the sport in 2016. I felt pretty burnt out and had no intentions to ever really do anything in swimming again. And sometimes a little bit of fortune kind of comes your way. I know it wasn't a great time around the world, but COVID was the event that got me back in the water, and a chance meeting with two gentlemen, Martin Smoothy and Krishan Jayratnam, who encouraged me to get back into swimming. And I started swimming and I really enjoyed it. It wasn't with the purpose of going after old unfulfilled goals. It was just purely from a physical and mental well-being perspective. But I think coming at it from that perspective, I started getting fit and faster and wanted to revisit these unfulfilled goals. And I think I certainly felt like I had failed. So I'm happy to use that word. Most people around me would say you did amazing, but it's, you are what you believe. And I felt like I hadn't achieved my potential in the sport. And it takes a bit of courage to revisit that and scrape off those old wounds. I certainly was very afraid to do it when I started out, but I think sometimes the things that you're scared of most are in fact the right path. And I knew that if I didn't do this now, I'd hold on to those regrets for a long, long time. So, I was in a position where I had time, I had the drive and desire to revisit it. So I took that opportunity. And for me, it was the Rottnest Channel Swim in Perth, Western Australia, targeting that and seeing what I could do there if I really went full wholehearted at it and trained my best. And I wasn't looking beyond that. You set your goal and you don't look to the summit again. You're climbing Everest, just look at one step in front of the other, one step in front of the other. Unfortunately, that journey ended up with a success and a win, and it was a big turning point for me in terms of not just my swim career, but in life, and then reorientating where I wanted to go. So, to answer your question, I think life might not pan out as planned or expected. You go in with your best foot forward. And, you might fall short and for very valid reasons, but there are always opportunities to reconnect with that path. And even if it might not be the exact same goal as it was, it might be repurposed through a different vehicle. And for me, it was marathon swimming. And it's a journey I never would have expected to be on, but it became so much more valuable going down the path and having the experiences here, because those failures made these achievements so much greater and richer.
And I'm going to add some comments in here, Simon, because I think you can kind of hear from Andy's voice and the way he explains this, coming from a different perspective and what I see. It's about identity as well, right? So whilst Andy was young, and I think you kind of heard it there, Andy identified himself as a swimmer. But Andy's not a swimmer. Andy is someone who enjoys swimming. So it's a subtle difference with the identity and letting go of all that pressure and all that expectation, and just enjoying what you do makes so much difference. And certainly, Andy's evolved through this journey and evolved as he's gotten a little bit older and wiser and so forth, but really identifying or getting rid of that identity as a swimmer and just being someone who enjoys being in the water just makes everything he does so much easier. And every time he's in the water, be it training, be it Manhattan, be it somewhere else, he's loving what he does. So whether he wins or doesn't, it doesn't matter anymore. And that just makes such a difference. You're able to relax in the water. There's no pressure. There's no expectation. You can just not cruise. That's the wrong word, but you can just effortlessly go through, and you're happy with whatever outcome.
Yeah. There's greater emphasis.
That's a really nice way of putting it. Okay, and I know you've got somewhere else to be quite soon, but I also know you're in Montenegro right now. You're wearing the 33.3 hoodie. You're in Montenegro for UltraSwim 33.3 #5 Montenegro. And Jay, I assume you're going to be swimming that as well. I mean, this is possibly your chance to swim while Andy does his Labrador stuff and swimming backwards and forwards and, looking after anybody who's struggling. Tell us a little bit about why you both love UltraSwim and what you're hoping to get out of the next week while you're there.
Do you want to know? Yeah, sure. Look, I got exposed to UltraSwim last year, and actually I knew of UltraSwim prior to that. I saw that kind of pop up on Instagram feeds or social feeds prior, and I thought, wow, this actually seems like a really interesting kind of event. And we got the opportunity to go to Montenegro last year, which I think was number 2, if I remember. I was just overjoyed with the way the community all comes together as part of this event. It's not about a competition, albeit there are people that compete up the front, and that's fine. But it really is about helping and supporting people achieve their whatever their goals might be, and just exceed their expectations and challenge themselves a little bit, because the format is really, really special in that it's very different than any other open water swim I've done. It's a point-to-point event over multiple days. So it's not like you just turn up and race and go home. You actually, you've got to prepare yourself for a multi-day event. You also get spoilt a little bit. I mean, we stay in nice accommodation, and we have, we finish an event and we effectively walk up the beach to a full, 5-course breakfast type thing, and there's a shower there. You kind of, like, it does put a whole new spin on what an open water event is. But for me, it really is the people, and specifically the last day when everybody crosses the line. Not one person leaves until that final person comes through the line. We're all sitting there cheering and encouraging all those people and celebrating them more to the point. So for me, it was really, really special. And I know at number 2, I actually had a little bit of a tear in my eye when I was watching all these people come through, because we swim and we do what we do and people look up to us. But I conversely look to these people and go, wow, they're actually achieving something they thought they couldn't probably achieve. And they're done it. So that for me is worth celebrating. And I look up to people like that.
Yeah. And Andy, I mean, you have quite a special role in UltraSwim, don't you? You're obviously the global ambassador, but you tend to go to the events. I've seen, I see, you sometimes you give us a little demonstration of your speed, maybe on the first swim. But then you're always there swimming beside, I remember when I was in Croatia and I wasn't feeling too good, and I was swimming really slowly, and you were swimming, at my pace. You swam beside me all the way across, and that really helped me get across one of the crossings. And I know that then you turned around and you went and swam next to somebody else, and you probably did that 3 or 4 times during that long swim. How do you see your role in this event?
I think it's exactly that, Simon, and Jay's just touched on the community and the culture that's there. It's such an inclusive and encouraging culture.
Feels like a family.
Yeah, I mean, I know that sounds cliche, but you go there as individuals and you come away as a family. We've still got the WhatsApp groups from these previous swims, and they're still quite active. I mean, that's a signal of it all. But 33.3 kilometers is a long way. It's a big challenge, and there's a lot of people that come into that and rightly so probably have doubts and fears and wonder if they're good enough to actually complete it. And I think when you're there and you have all these people around you saying, yes, you can, yes, keep going, just keep going, get across this bay and just worry about the rest later. Hang in there. It just makes the world of a difference. And I feel that my role in UltraSwim, yes, I could probably swim on and go and do this thing quite fast. But I feel like it's so much more powerful and helpful to be there right beside people when they're in their toughest moments, and help through and keep them encouraged to keep pressing on. And that's why I will try and find people and swim beside them and just give them a good thumbs up and say, look, you got this. You can do this. Keep going. Yeah. I'll go and try and speak to people that might be having doubts, and Jay does the same, and sharing any knowledge that we can in order to help these people achieve their goals. Because when you go through that journey, and I've experienced it myself, when you go through that journey and achieve something that is your dream, or you felt like you weren't good enough to achieve, there's so much growth in that process, and that confidence, it all flows into other areas of life as well. So it's such a powerful thing, and when you go through that journey and share it with other people, it just really amplifies the entire experience. So I think that's what makes UltraSwim what it is, which is, for both of us, a special event. It's probably our favourite event out of
Well, it's where I met the two of you and got to know you a little bit. You know, you have that time to really talk to other swimmers and get to know them. So, I mean, that's been amazing talking to the two of you. That went places I wasn't quite expecting, but that was fabulous. I really enjoyed it.
Well,
thank you, Simon.
Yeah.
One quick question for you. We're looking at future challenges.
Shall I stop recording? Or is this...
No, happy for people to be privy to this and
okay,
actually encourage it. But, you know, for me personally, I'd love to do challenges that inject some purpose behind them. And I'd love to do something in the UK. Wondered if you had any ideas.
Something in the UK.
And perhaps something a bit more different. I'm aware there's issues with water quality.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely got, you know, the water quality issue is really big politically here at the moment, and you know, there's a lot of interest in improving our waterways, and whether that means, you know, getting Andy Donaldson to come and swim in the Thames and get sick so that the whole world's media pays attention. might not be the best forward.
I know I put you on the spot here, Simon, so there's no pressure, but you know, that's what I'm thinking. Like,
yeah,
for me, I'm very fortunate and content with the things I've done, and when I look ahead, I'm more excited about using swimming to help others and make a difference. And you know, I'm British. I grew up in the UK. I grew up in the west of Scotland, and I see things like the sewerage issues, and I want to do something. So, you know, whether anyone has ideas, whether that's you or people that read Outdoor Swimmer, and they see something together. And you know, I don't want this to be my challenge. I want it to be on behalf of the swimming community and have more people involved, because we all use these waterways. We all have a relationship with our lakes, oceans, and and we have a voice where we can make a difference. So I want to try and do something. And
I wonder if you could do something with Hector Pardo, maybe. You know, he set the record for Windermere last summer, just before he went to the Olympics, and he's a big campaigner for clean waterways in this country. And maybe some kind of tandem swim with him would be interesting. See if you how your pace matches there.
I'll tell him to slow down.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always, you know, whoever you are, you can always find someone faster than you, can't you? That is.
That's it, and that's the beauty of sport, isn't it? There's always something that they're quicker and faster. So
well, maybe someone watching this can think of something as well. I'll obviously put my mind to it. But you know, ideas can come from all over the place. So, you know, if someone out there is watching and thinks, I'd love Andy to come here and swim here and raise awareness about this, you know, they can track us down easily enough.
Please reach out. Yeah, that's good. Maybe keep them down the Thames. That could be an interesting one.
Well, you're welcome to come and swim with me.
I've seen where you swim, so yeah, I'll take you up on that.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's fantastic to talk to you. I'm sorry I can't be with you in Montenegro this time. I was just in Greece with UltraSwim number 4, which was absolutely fantastic. So, you know, make sure they invite you to that one next time, and you know, don't be swimming around Manhattan Island at the same time.
Yeah. Did you see the swimwear?
Did I?
Oh, did you see the swimwear? We were there as well.
Oh,
remember?
yeah. No, I know you were there.
So for context, if anybody hasn't seen or doesn't know,
we can. I've got a picture. I can add that to the end of the video.
All right. Well, that'll be self-explanatory enough. So we were there in spirit.
Yeah, it was a lovely event. Really, really good.
Awesome.
Right, I better stop recording now. Amazing talking to the two of you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Simon. Thanks, Simon.
Yeah.